Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and today we will be doing my May wrap-up. So before we get into the video, I do just want to take the time to make this video my formal support of the Black Lives Matter movement. And if you yourself are not a supporter of the movement and feel that the phrase Black Lives Matter is illegitimate in any way, shape, or form, I would kindly direct you to the subscribe button so you can click that and unsubscribe very quickly from my channel, because I do not want anybody in support of my channel that does not support the Black Lives Matter movement. The murder of George Floyd was just one case that happens hundreds in not only this country but all over the world. It is something to be legitimately outraged against. The entire world deserves justice and equality. So again, if you are not using your voice, if you are not signing petitions, if you are not supporting the Black Lives Matter movement publicly, I would kindly ask you to distance yourself from my personal space and do better as a human being going forward. With that, let's get into the books that I read in May. May was definitely not as great a reading month as it usually is for me. I read 7 books, which is still great. I'm not going to knock myself for it too much, but if you were unaware, I did host Bookfest in Bed on my channel on May 30th, which was a virtual book convention where I had 14 authors as well as 6 booktuber panels with my fellow co-host Carly from Carly's Books, and all of that is linked up in the cards. It is a 12-hour live show, so don't feel obligated to watch the whole thing. If you click in the description bar, I have all of the timestamps down below, but that's what I was dedicating a lot of my time and energy towards in the month of May, and I was also just not in a great reading mood. I just wasn't actively wanting to read that much, so that also contributes to the lower amount of books that I had this month as opposed to others. But regardless, I did read 7 books, so let's talk about them. The first book that I finished in May was The Midnight Lie by Marie Rutowski. I don't have the book or cover in front of me, so I'm kind of going off the top of my head, so I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. What was this book even about? What was the plot? I'm gonna have to look it up. Okay, so I had to look up the description of this book because I really don't remember what happened, which we'll get into on my thoughts as to why that perhaps is. So we are following our main character, Nareem, and she is a part of the lower caste of this particular city. The city is heavily influenced by a caste system where the lower caste, where Nareem lives, they can't wear colors, they can't eat sweet things. It's a very labor-inducive. We all know the tropes of this dystopian kind of caste system that a lot of YA books indulge in. And one time when Nareem was arrested and taken to jail, she meets Sid, who is this member from a higher caste who kind of tempts Nareem with the ability to have magic and kind of forge documents in order to get to the higher caste parts of the city and indulge in kind of, luxury and things like that, and shows her a different side of the world and kind of gives her hope for a better chance at life. This was so messy, as you can probably tell by the fact that I had to refresh my memory on what this book is about, and that usually doesn't happen. I can usually remember quite well the books, or at least a brief synopsis of the books I read, even months afterwards, but the plot was just so messy, and the pacing, I think, is the part that really fell flat in this book. But the book was just so messy, and what I mean by that is the world building was a bit chaotic, because especially at the very end, the last 10% of the book, there was kind of this new element brought in that wasn't really talked about or wasn't really alluded to too much in the prior world building. It was, but it wasn't fully fleshed out to me. I really just don't think I understand the scope of the world and kind of what the rules are, and especially the magic system. I understand the caste system. I think that was explained very well with the lower class, and then there's kind of this in between, and then the higher caste. But it's when the magic and kind of the fantastical elements of the story was incorporated where it really just fell flat and kind of lost me. I'm not sure if it would have benefited me to read the Winter's Curse trilogy before picking this up, because I do know that this is a, not continuation, but it's kind of in the same world, so maybe that is kind of a reason why I'm so confused. But even if that is the case, it is not a sequel, so even if I would have gotten more of an understanding from reading the Winter's Curse trilogy, it really shouldn't matter. So that is a huge kind of negative part of the story. Now, the reason I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars and the reason that I would recommend it to people is because the romance was so good. Like, you can just tell by my tone shift and my expression, like, it was so not even steamy, but it was, like, the chemistry was so apparent from their first meeting. Sid is probably one of, like, my favorite love interests of all time. Okay, maybe that's a stretch, but, like, I loved her. She gave me that kind of snarky, like, charismatic bad boy type that we get with a lot of hetero ships, and I loved it so much. It was so nice to see their relationship blossom. I just had so much fun with their interactions. I loved them. I loved them. I wanted Sid to step on me the entire time. It was so fun in that aspect. So although the world is really chaotic, although the pacing is absolutely trash, although it's just really weird and very fuzzy in my mind, I can clearly remember how much I loved Nareem and Sid. And for that, I would recommend it, especially if you're looking for sapphic fantasy or sapphic relationships in general that aren't necessarily super, like, lovey-dovey, touchy-feely. Like, they definitely have those aspects, but they're still, like, very heavy sexual tension that I really appreciate in all of romance. So I really enjoyed this. So if you can get past kind of the structural things, and if you just go into it expecting a fun, character-driven sapphic romance in a kind of fantastical, kind of just weird, complicated setting, I would recommend this wholeheartedly. Now, the next book I have to talk about has 0 flaws. 0. None. It's absolute perfection, and you need it right now in your hands, and you need to be reading it immediately. And that is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. This was the last book that I finished for my Basic Booktuber Reads Adult High Fantasy video. If you haven't watched that, definitely go check it out. It was really fun. This is about our main character, Locke Lamora, and when he was a kid, he was an orphan at a very young age, and at first he was stealing from this kind of criminal boss. I don't know if it was like a criminal, but basically like a thieving operation when he was very young. And he was stealing too much. And so he was sold, well, I don't even know why I did air quotes, he was sold to this kind of cult priest guy called Father Chains, and thus he was incorporated into the Gentleman Bastards. And these Gentleman Bastards are a part of this religion of the 13th god, I believe I think it's the 13th god. I could be wrong about that, but basically they steal for their god of thievery, of bastards, of outcasts, and there's a lot that goes into their training. They have to learn how to be gentlemen, they have to learn all these languages and cultural things, and they have to create this elaborate plan, and it is just so interesting and so fun, so entertaining. This was such a fast-paced book that was so intricately woven, and I enjoyed it so much. It was so funny. It was so interesting to learn about the machinations of the city that was heavily Venetian inspired. It was so fun to learn about Locke as he grew up and all of his little thievery plots as he was growing up to his current day plot and the downfalls and the failures of various different things and the outcomes of those failures. I will say, if you are like 100% a plot driven reader, this might be a little jarring for you, because I would say that the main plot doesn't really start until halfway through the book. But throughout the book, you see various other plots from backstories and kind of little subplots woven throughout the whole book. So I still think it would capture your attention and you still would have a fun time. But again, it might be a little jarring for you. I loved this so much. The characters in here, so well developed. Their friendship dynamics is so amazing. I would say above thievery, above manipulation, the theme of this book is truly friendship, and I loved it so much. I don't think I've ever read a better friendship dynamic from Locke or Jean. They are the ultimate bro TP of all bro TPs, and I just had such a fun time with this. 5 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend it to anybody, whether you are a fantasy reader or you're not, because this was overall such a fun time, and I just need everybody to read this. It was so amazing. After my kind of 2-week long reading of heavy adult fantasy, I really wanted to just read something quick and fun, and so I picked up Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. This is about our main character, and she is having kind of a rocky relationship with her current boyfriend, and I believe something happens with their current living situation. I don't know if they like couldn't make payments or what, but they end up living with her boyfriend's father. They end up moving into his house, and romance ensues between our main character and her boyfriend's father. So it was a fun time. It was definitely a lot more soft and domestic than I was expecting it to be. If you have like a domestic kink, like if you are all for, you know, catering to your partner in all avenues with like cooking and cleaning and just having the white picket fence lifestyle, this is gonna be all for you. I personally am not crazy about that, but I did enjoy kind of seeing this whole situation unfold, and the tension and the pining, of course, was immaculate. I will say there's also not really cheating involved in this. I don't recall that there is any cheating, so if that is kind of a turnoff for you, pretty sure you're safe in this aspect between our two main characters, at least. So it was fun. I had a good time, and I'm excited to read more of her works in the future. I believe I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. So again, if you're looking for like a smutty romance book, here you go. The next book I read was Witches of Ash and Ruin by E. Latimer. E. Latimer was one of the authors that was featured in BookFest in Bed, so definitely go check that out if you are interested in hearing her talk about this book. But basically, this is following our main character, and she lives in this small conservative Irish town. She is the daughter of the reverend of the town, and this church is kind of more like a cult than it is a formal Catholic gathering. It is very extreme in that sense, but she actually on the side and secretly is a part of the local coven, and her coven actually have to merge or work with a rival coven in order to defeat and find this serial killer who is targeting witches. And throughout this whole thing, she's also trying to come to terms with her bisexuality and juggling her family life versus her chosen family and all of those things. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was really fun and entertaining. If you are looking for a book that centers around the women from 300 Fox Way, from the Raven Boys, this is 100% it. I know it was a big inspiration for E. Latimer, and I think she knocked it out of the park. I also really, really loved the depiction of witches in this book. It is very, very much like modern witchcraft. It is very reminiscent of actual practices that modern witches partake in, and I just thought it was a really realistic depiction of witchcraft versus the kind of campy stereotype that a lot of us are used to, and I appreciated that so much, and I loved seeing that a lot. I will say that I did go into this book expecting more of an influence in Celtic mythology. It obviously is there because a lot of these witches do worship these deities, but I thought it was going to be a much more mythological, much more fantastical book than it really was. I would definitely categorize this as a light fantasy book and a more true crimey mixed with like the modern witchcraft setting. So if you are a person that prefers lighter fantasy, contemporary fantasy, whatever you want to call it, definitely would recommend this because I think you would really like it a lot. I also will say I couldn't really attach to any of the characters too much. I didn't think our main character had a whole lot of a personality, and thus I couldn't get on board with the sapphic relationship that is in it, but there were cute moments, and overall this book was very entertaining. As I said, I enjoyed my reading experience of it, and I am excited to see what this author puts out in the future. The next book I read was Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angelis. This is another author who was featured in Bookfest in Bed. She was actually our first author who we had on, and this is an absolute decadent piece of literature. This is featured in an upcoming vlog, so I don't want to say too much about it, but basically we are following Kalia as she escapes to this nearby town in order to engage in this magician competition, and a lot of drama ensues, a lot of magic ensues, a lot of mystery. It was an absolute incredible reading experience. This book is written like a red velvet cheesecake would be in book form. It is so rich, so decadent, so atmospheric. Kalia is the strongest protagonist I have ever read about, point blank period. She is so confident and so sure of herself, but still has these internal struggles that the reader sees and hears, and it is incredible. Oh my god. And the romance in here made me forget all about the villain, and if y'all know anything about my reading taste, you know I will always root for the villain, and I didn't even know him in this book. It was so good. I know that this book, it has been pushed back to like August 25th, I believe, but I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was incredible. So excited for the second book, and I am so excited for more people to read this. The next book I finished was Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ngan. I am so proud of myself for finally reading this. I have had this on my shelves since last June or March, I believe. I got it signed at Y'all West when I went, and I met Natasha, and she was such a beautiful woman inside and out, truly. This is following our main character, Lay, and she is unfortunately sold to the king's concubines, and this world is kind of divided up into a caste system. The paper caste is all humans, the steel caste is half humans, half demons, and then the moon caste is all demons, and these demons have kind of animalistic qualities and features, and Lay was chosen because she has these bright golden eyes, and so they believed that she would be very alluring to the king. So this book deals with a ton of heavy topics like sexual assault and rape and imperialism and oppression, and all of that is woven into the story, but we do get this kind of light and hopeful feeling because Lay ends up falling in love with another concubine. And so we get these kind of bright moments throughout the story. And I loved this book. As much as you can love a book about these heavy, sad, depressing, unfortunate topics, I really, really enjoy my reading experience with this. I listened to the audiobook. I was reading along physically. I tabbed it up a couple times. And I just think that this book is really beautiful and honestly really needed, because I don't think that there's a ton of fantasy that really delves into these heavy topics that, say, contemporaries usually do, and I really loved this. I will say that I kind of consider this a standalone. Like, if you just don't read the epilogue, I feel like this could easily stand on its own, and I haven't decided if I'm going to read the sequel or not. I definitely want to see more opinions on the sequel, so if you have read the sequel, let me know if it's worth the read, because I really enjoyed how this ended in and of itself, and I appreciated it a whole lot. If you were worried at all about picking this up, I know it was really hyped for a while and then people started to get disappointed with it, but I personally enjoyed this so much, and I think that a lot of people who read YA fantasy would also appreciate what this has done and what this has changed or potentially changed about the genre. So this was a great one. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, and again, I highly recommend it. I do think it's worth the hype, and I think it is worth the read. And finally, this month was just filled with sapphics. I didn't realize how many sapphic books I read in May until compiling this list, but I love that for me. The last book that I read in May was The Henna Wars by Adiba Jagadar. This is about our main character. She is Bengali, and she also lives in this kind of small Irish town, and she was tasked with this project in school. I think it was like a business class, to create your own business, and because of her heritage, she decides that she is going to do a henna business. And unfortunately, her crush in class, who is a Brazilian girl, decides that she also wants to do a henna competition or a henna business. And so our main character is kind of going through these mixed emotions where she really likes this girl, but she's also dealing with the hurt from being culturally appropriated by her crush and by someone she really cares about. And paired with that, our main character has also recently came out as lesbian to her parents. And so there's a lot of kind of heavier topics with this book, but you also get a lot of highlights. It is so rich in culture. You get so much food and so much of the like family dynamics of our main character and her family, and you see the strong sisterly bond, and you see this discussions about cultural appropriation and sexuality and being a part of the LGBT spectrum while being in kind of a conservative and religious household, because our main character is also Muslim. So there's a lot that is dealt with in this novel, but overall I had an amazing reading experience with this. It really does highlight the fact that if you are only reading white queer stories, you are not reading diversely enough, because there are just so many things that white LGBT members will never experience if you are a person of color. And I really appreciated this book for what it was. I really appreciated how vast the culture was implemented in this story. I could not tell you how many times I was hungry throughout this reading experience. It was a time. I really did enjoy this, and I also gave this 4 out of 5 stars. So that is it for all of the books that I read in the month of May. I'm very curious to hear any and all thoughts of the books that I did read. I would love to have a conversation with you. Normally, I would link my Amazon affiliate links for you to buy the books, but if you have the means to buy the books, I would strongly recommend donating that money instead to various Black Lives Matter fundraisers. I will have links in the description bar below. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!